Imagine this. You're lying in bed beside someone you once believed was your soulmate. The room is quiet. The air between you feels thick, not with warmth, but with something far more elusive: distance. You could reach out, run your hand across their back, say something kind, make a joke, but you don't. They don't either. Both of you scroll through glowing screens, exchanging glances not with each other, but with curated illusions. And in that moment, perhaps not consciously, but somewhere deep inside, you wonder, is this really love, or just the absence of loneliness with a convenient body next to you? You tell yourself it's normal, that relationships change, that the butterflies were never meant to stay, that love is hard work, that it's society, or timing, or stress, or just how things go. But another voice, quieter, more unsettling, asks if perhaps you never really knew what love was to begin with. If what you've been chasing, desiring, sacrificing for, was never love, but a clever imitation wearing its scent. Now imagine scrolling through a sea of perfect couples on social media. Candlelit dinners, laughing selfies, two people intertwined like puzzle pieces. It's beautiful, effortless, cinematic. But you've been around long enough to suspect that behind those images lies something far more complex, something frail, something breaking, something utterly unspoken. You wonder how many of them are also lying in bed beside someone, in silence. Modern love is everywhere, streaming on your screens, written into pop lyrics, etched into your timelines. It shouts at you from every corner. Love is everything. Love is freedom. Love is happiness. But what if love, as we understand it today, is the great lie of our generation? What if it has been so diluted, commodified, and romanticized that it no longer serves its original purpose? What if the very thing we long for most is the very thing we are least prepared to understand, nurture, or survive? And here's the paradox that should stop you in your tracks. We've never had more freedom to choose love, and yet we've never been more lost in it. You can date hundreds of people from your phone. You can leave any relationship the moment it hurts. You can tailor your experience, define your boundaries, and rewrite your rules. You can chase connection across continents, across identities, across timelines. But are we more connected or just more distracted? Modern love is coated in the language of self-care and self-expression. It tells you to find someone who matches your energy, to never settle, to choose only what aligns. But behind this spiritualized vocabulary often lies a refusal to confront the discomfort that real love demands. Because real love isn't alignment, it's friction, it's contradiction, it's sitting in your own darkness while making room for someone else's. So ask yourself, when did love become about how someone makes you feel, rather than how much truth you're willing to bear with them? When did intimacy become about vibes, aesthetics, or emotional availability, rather than presence, effort, and brutal honesty? When did the relationship become a mirror for your validation, rather than a crucible for your transformation? You may have noticed something else. Modern love is terrified of depth. We swipe away potential soulmates because they used the wrong emoji. We ghost people who remind us of parts of ourselves we haven't yet made peace with. We call discomfort a red flag and mistake emotional wounds for incompatibility. In our quest to avoid suffering, we've built a love that never asks us to suffer at all. But love, real love, has always required suffering. Not in the sense of abuse or self-betrayal, but in the sacred act of staying, in the willingness to be misunderstood, in the humility to admit you were wrong again and again for the sake of something larger than yourself. And yet, modern love says, leave when it's hard, move on when it's unclear, heal first, then love. But what if healing only happens through love? What if the person who triggers you isn't an enemy to flee from, but the catalyst you've been unconsciously seeking? This is the great question we must confront. Have we mistaken comfort for love, chemistry for destiny, compatibility for truth? And perhaps most terrifying of all, if we've never truly known what love is, how many of our relationships are just performances? Roles we've memorized, needs we project, escapes we dress up as intimacy. Now pause, feel the weight of that. You've dated, you've loved, you've broken hearts and had yours broken. You've cried on floors and stared at unread messages. But what if all of that, the longing, the heartbreak, the obsession, was rooted in an illusion sold to us by culture, reinforced by trauma, justified by ideology, and now embedded so deeply in our psyche that we can't tell the difference between connection and addiction. Because what you're about to discover is that modern love isn't just confused, it's built on a foundation that was never designed to endure human truth. The question isn't whether love is dead. The question is, was it ever born at all in the modern age? Let's go deeper. Modern love is built on a wound, not just a personal one, but a civilizational fracture, a quiet, collective trauma that began long before you were born. You inherited it the moment you learned what it meant to be desirable, the moment you were taught what love is supposed to feel like. You didn't question it. How could you? It was in the movies, the stories, the lullabies. You swallowed the myth whole before you even knew you had a choice. But beneath that myth, something ancient was already dying. To understand the true problem with modern love, you must first understand this. Love today is not between two people, it's between two egos. We don't fall in love with people anymore. We fall in love with projections. We fall in love with ideas about who someone could be, about who we could become in their presence, about what their validation might finally cure inside us. Carl Jung warned of this. He spoke of the anima and animus, the inner archetypes of the opposite gender we carry unconsciously. When we fall in love, especially intensely, we often project these archetypes onto the other. We don't see them. We see our missing parts dressed in flesh and fantasy. We see salvation. But here's the danger. Projection is not love, it's possession. It's the psyche trying to reunite with itself through another human being. And when the illusion breaks, as it always must, we don't say, I've retrieved another piece of my soul. We say, you changed, you disappointed me, you're not who I thought you were. Of course they're not, they never were. Modern love suffers because it begins in fantasy and ends in resentment. It begins with dopamine and ends in disappointment. It begins with, this person completes me, and ends with, this person has destroyed me. But it goes deeper. Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote, "It is not a lack of love, but a lack of friendship that makes unhappy marriages." And yet modern love rarely starts with friendship. It starts with infatuation, intensity, urgency, with sexual compatibility and emotional highs. The deep work of knowing someone, truly knowing, is often skipped entirely. Why? Because to truly know someone, you must slow down. And in modern love, slowness is mistaken for disinterest, stillness is mistaken for stagnation, patience is mistaken for weakness. Arthur Schopenhauer had a bleak but piercing view on love. He believed it was not about fulfillment or romance, but about the blind urge of nature to reproduce, using illusion as bait. What we call falling in love, he argued, is merely biology tricking us into continuing the species, disguising lust as transcendence. And once the reproductive urge fades, so too does the love. That may sound cynical, but look at how we define love today. It must be passionate, exciting, sexually fulfilling, aesthetically pleasing, emotionally supportive, spiritually expansive, psychologically safe, and on top of that, it must last. What if the very expectations we place on love are killing it? What if love has become a consumer experience, one we evaluate, rate, and discard when it no longer meets our ever-expanding demands? Jean-Paul Sartre once said, "Hell is other people." But what he meant was not that others are inherently awful, but that our identity becomes distorted through their gaze. In relationships, this becomes painfully true. We start performing. We adapt, we hide, we manipulate our image so that we remain desirable. We show only the parts we think will be loved and exile the rest. And here lies a hidden, devastating truth. Most people have never been loved, only rewarded for being useful. Useful in their beauty, their presence, their affection, their approval. This is why so many of us feel alone, even inside relationships. We don't feel seen, we feel consumed. Modern love cannot thrive in this performance culture, because when you fall in love with someone's mask, you also create your own. And soon, the relationship becomes a masquerade, two costumes dancing, terrified of what might happen if they ever took the masks off. This is what makes love so terrifying in our time. To love in a true, raw, authentic way is now an act of rebellion, to show your shadow, to admit your contradictions, to say, "I don't always know who I am, but I want to find out, beside you." That is no longer romantic. It is dangerous, because it requires vulnerability, not perfection. accountability, not chemistry, presence, not performance, and yet we swipe, ghost, chase, spiral, thinking love is out there, just one perfect person away. We consume content that tells us how to manifest the ideal partner, how to know if they're high value, how to set boundaries so we never feel pain again. But do you see the problem? We've turned love into a transaction of self-interest, a cost-benefit analysis wrapped in spiritual jargon. You ask, how do they make me feel? But rarely, who do I become when I'm with them? Or more terrifyingly, am I ready to be seen as I really am? Modern love is a house built on sand, and that sand is the fragile human ego. And the ego is terrified of real love, because real love dissolves control. It confronts you with your limitations. It drags your insecurities to the surface. It threatens to annihilate everything you think you are, and in return, it offers the possibility of becoming something whole, not comfortable, not always safe, but real. Viktor Frankl, survivor of the Holocaust and creator of logotherapy, once said, "Love is the only way to grasp another human being in the innermost core of their personality. Not fix, not possess, not complete, but grasp, to see, to bear, to witness." But how can you grasp someone's soul if you don't even know your own? This is the root of the problem, not dating apps, not feminism or patriarchy, not communication styles or attachment theory. It is the absence of self-knowledge. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you will call it fate." And in love, our unconscious wounds, abandonment, shame, fear, become the silent architects of our desire. We fall for those who mirror our childhood traumas, not out of madness, but because our psyche is seeking completion. But if you don't know your shadow, you'll mistake your partner for your savior or your destroyer, and you'll call that love. It isn't. It's trauma doing cosplay. And yet we keep repeating the cycle, generation after generation, chasing the high, avoiding the depth, blaming others for the mirror they unwillingly hold up to our own wounds. But it doesn't have to stay this way. Because once you see the roots, you can begin to pull them, and once you question the story, you can begin to rewrite it. But before that, you must see what the story has already cost you. You must look into the mirror of modern love and face its shadow. Only then can you begin to understand what you've really been giving up in its name. You didn't notice it happening at first. No one does. It starts slowly, quietly, like water wearing down stone. One glance at your phone during a vulnerable moment, one instinct to withdraw rather than speak, one assumption made instead of a question asked. Over time, what begins as small fractures evolve into fault lines, invisible, insidious. And soon, you're no longer in love. You're in a pattern, one that looks like love, sounds like love, even hurts like love, but it isn't. Because here's the truth. Modern love is haunted by things we refuse to name. It's haunted by the fear of being alone, yet terrified of truly being seen. Haunted by the myth of the one, yet paralyzed by too many choices. Haunted by romantic fantasies, yet allergic to emotional reality. We want the feeling without the risk, the connection without the inconvenience, the storybook ending without the inner work. And it is this refusal to confront the cost of our illusions that creates the most destructive consequence of all. We suffer in relationships not because they're broken, but because we are asking them to save us from ourselves. You think you want a partner, but what you really want is a rescue mission. Rescue from your loneliness, from your self-doubt, from your existential confusion. This is not love, this is spiritual outsourcing. And the longer you cling to this fantasy, the more fragmented you become, because the relationship starts to take on the impossible role of healer, therapist, God. And it fails, it always fails, because no partner can fill a hole you refuse to acknowledge. So what happens? You blame them. You say they changed. You say they stopped showing up. You say they no longer see you. But the truth, the aching, violent truth, is that they were never supposed to carry what you refuse to hold within yourself. That's when resentment creeps in, when sex becomes transactional, when communication becomes a chess game, when love becomes a scorecard and everything turns into debt. They owe you emotional presence, they owe you attention, they owe you the happiness you thought love would guarantee. But no one tells you the quiet cost of conditional love. You become a beggar in your own soul. You wait for crumbs of affection. You contort yourself to be desirable. You perform emotional intelligence while secretly manipulating the outcome. You call it conscious relating, but really, you're just terrified of rejection. This is the modern performance of intimacy, spiritual language covering emotional illiteracy. We know how to say, "I feel unsafe," or "I need space," but few of us know how to say, "I'm afraid you'll leave me if you see who I really am." And here's where the mind starts to fragment. Your brain, evolutionarily, was not built for this level of ambiguity. In ancient times, connection meant survival. To be loved meant to be protected. To be seen meant to belong. But now, you live in a world where attention is cheap, desire is endless, and nothing is certain. Your nervous system is constantly toggling between routine. In hunger and distrust, you crave closeness, but the moment you feel it, you brace for its loss. So even when you do find someone, the body doesn't relax, it calculates. How long will this last? Can I do better? Are they losing interest? Is this safe? That is not love. That is trauma running your love life. And it doesn't just affect individuals, it ripples outward, reshaping culture itself. Look around. Modern society has subtly redefined love as a self-development tool. Relationships are no longer sacred containers, they're personal growth opportunities. Your partner isn't someone to walk beside, they're someone to optimize you, to reflect your vibration, to align with your goals, to make your life look good on paper or on screen. This is not intimacy, this is branding. You are taught to ask, does this person raise my frequency? But not, can I sit with their pain without trying to fix it? You are told to visualize your dream partner, but not to become someone capable of loving without conditions. Even healing has become a prerequisite for dating. Do your shadow work before getting into a relationship, they say. But what if the relationship is the shadow work? What if the rawness, the friction, the ugly vulnerability is the medicine, not the problem? But we've been conditioned to run, conditioned to optimize, conditioned to believe that love is supposed to feel good all the time, and if it doesn't, then someone is doing it wrong. And the result, a generation of people who are more connected than ever, yet lonelier than ever. A culture where we speak endlessly about attachment styles, but avoid actual attachment. Where we chase soulmates like collectibles, but fear commitment like a cage. Where we write poetic captions about twin flames and trauma bonds, but can't hold eye contact over dinner. This fragmentation is not an accident, it is the logical outcome of a culture that has trained us to treat love not as a practice, but as a product. In a world obsessed with speed, products are designed to be consumed, not cultivated. So love becomes fast, disposable, performative. We talk about emotional safety while weaponizing silence. We talk about communication while hiding behind text bubbles. We talk about boundaries while building walls we never intend to lower. And beneath it all, a silent fear pulses. What if I am fundamentally unlovable unless I perform perfectly? This is the deepest, most devastating consequence of modern love. It teaches you that who you are is not enough, not attractive enough, not spiritual enough, not stable enough, not safe enough. So you spend your life becoming lovable without ever learning how to love. And by the time you realize the price you've paid, the loneliness you tried to escape has only deepened, because now you're not just alone, you're unknown to others and to yourself. But what if this loneliness was never the enemy? What if it was the beginning? Because here's the shift no one talks about. Love is not the solution to your loneliness, it is the reward for facing it. Only when you stop outsourcing your healing can you begin to offer your presence. Only when you confront your fears can you begin to hold someone else's. Only when you know the sound of your own soul can you hear the call of another. But to reach that place, something must first break. Your idea of love, your expectations, your emotional strategies, your carefully curated identity, and what's left after the break. We're not there yet, but we're getting close. You can feel it now, that something must change, not just in your relationships, but in your entire way of loving. But here's the paradox. You cannot fix this by trying harder. You fix it by breaking the spell. Because to love in the modern world is to swim against a current that is pulling you toward ego, fear, fantasy, and escape. To love truly, deeply, painfully, without illusion, is nothing short of rebellion, and rebellion, by its nature, begins in the mind. So start here. Question everything you've ever been taught about love. Question the stories, the roles, the language. Ask yourself, whose version of love have I been living out? Was it my parents'? Was it Hollywood's? Was it a trauma script I mistook for fate? When you begin to dismantle those stories, you begin to see how much of your love life was never yours to begin with. You were cast in a play before you knew the rules, told to perform for connection, to trade authenticity for approval, to earn love through achievement, charm, compliance, or control. But what if love isn't something you earn? What if love is something you remember? Here's the radical shift. You were born with the capacity to love without conditions, but you were trained to forget. The rebellion begins by remembering. Remembering that intimacy is not found in perfection, it's born in shared imperfection. That the goal of love isn't to avoid pain, but to build a container strong enough to hold it. That love isn't measured by how rarely you fight, but by how honestly you repair. This goes against everything you've been taught. You were told to filter, to brand, to protect your heart behind endless boundaries. But boundaries without vulnerability are just walls, and behind those walls, you don't find safety, you find silence. So take the risk, begin removing the mask, piece by piece. You don't have to rip it off in one grand gesture. Start small. Tell someone something real today, something unpolished, something that makes your voice tremble. Say, sometimes I push people away because I'm scared they'll leave first. Say, I don't know what I'm doing, but I want to try. Say, I thought I needed to be perfect, but maybe I just need to be here. These are not weaknesses. These are rebellions. Because in a world obsessed with image, honesty is revolution. But rebellion is not just emotional, I'd say. It's philosophical. You must change your orientation to what love is. Love is not possession. It's not completion. It's not a performance. Love is an act of witnessing, of staying, of choosing again and again without needing it to always feel good. Nietzsche once said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." The same applies to love. When your love has a why, a reason beyond pleasure or validation, you stop chasing the how. You stop asking, "Are we vibing?" and start asking, "What are we building?" You stop running from conflict. You learn to stand inside it, to use it, to grow from it. This is what ancient relationships were based on. Purpose, not pleasure. Love wasn't about soulmates, it was about soul work. Two people committing not to a feeling, but to a becoming. They understood that love was a path, and walking it would break you open and build you again. So why not return to that? Why not rebuild love on sacred ground? Let your love be a fire, not just for comfort, but for purification. Let it burn away your pride, your scripts, your projections. Let it show you where you are still afraid, still armored, still holding your breath. Let love be a furnace, not for fantasy, but for transformation. And you don't need a partner to begin. In fact, the most powerful rebellion starts in solitude, because until you can sit with your own emptiness without panicking, you will always use others as a distraction. Modern love fails because most people are terrified of their own silence. So they fill it with noise, with need, with novelty. But nothing can replace the strength that comes from knowing yourself without an audience. Spend time there, in the quiet, in the ache, in the place where love is no longer a promise, but a practice. Ask yourself, am I seeking love to be saved or to be revealed? Am I choosing people who see me or people who soot me? Am I willing to love without control, without outcome, without knowing how it ends? These are the questions of the rebel. Because the rebel doesn't wait for the right person. The rebel becomes the right presence. And from that presence, everything changes. You'll stop chasing high chemistry with low compatibility. You'll stop repeating karmic patterns dressed up as passion. You'll stop sacrificing truth to avoid being alone. Instead, you'll begin to recognize love not by how it feels, but by how it frees you. Not by how much it excites you, but by how much it expands you. And when you do meet someone, if and when, you won't come to them with empty hands. You'll bring your fullness, you'll bring your clarity, you'll bring your scars, not as warnings, but as maps. You won't ask them to complete you, you'll ask them to walk with you, and they won't be your purpose, they'll be your partner in purpose. But here's the most liberating truth of all: you don't need love to feel whole, you need wholeness to feel love. That's the rebellion, to love without dependency, to connect without clinging, to give without losing, to be vulnerable without collapsing, to build something sacred in a culture of spectacle, to stay awake in a world that numbs, to let love be a mirror, not a mask. And yes, it will hurt. But this kind of pain purifies, this kind of ache awakens, this kind of love changes you forever. So let this be the beginning of your rebellion. Burn the fantasy, break the myth, stand naked in the mirror and say, I will love, not to be loved, but to be true. Because the moment you stop chasing love and start becoming love, you set fire to every illusion that ever held you hostage, and from those ashes, you rise. What if everything you thought love was, had to die? Not because it was wrong, but because it was incomplete, because it was born in a world that taught you to be small, because it was shaped by wounds that never had a voice, because it was inherited, not chosen. So here you are. Not broken, not unlovable, just standing at the edge of an old dream, one that can no longer hold who you are becoming. This is the moment when real love begins, not with fireworks, not with a rush, not with a confession, but with a funeral. You lay to rest every story that told you love had to save you. You bury the myth that said you needed to earn it. You grieve the time you wasted chasing reflections of your missing pieces in someone else's eyes. And from that sacred grief, something rises. Not a new partner, not a new strategy, not a new rulebook, but a new self. A self that no longer confuses attachment with intimacy. A self that no longer negotiates its worth. A self that knows love is not a destination, it is a mirror. And the truth that has always been waiting for you is this: love will not give you what you want, it will give you what you are. You don't attract what you desire, you attract what you embody. So long as you seek love from a place of emptiness, you will find lovers who confirm that emptiness. So long as you seek love from a place of fear, you will find relationships that demand control. So long as you seek love to escape yourself, you will keep meeting versions of yourself in others and running. But the moment you turn inward, truly inward, everything shifts. You stop asking, where is the one? And you start asking, who am I when I am alone? You stop wondering, why do people leave me? And you start wondering, why do I abandon myself when I'm not being validated? You stop trying to become more attractive, and you start becoming more available to your own depths. That is the ultimate realization, that love was never outside you. It was never waiting in a swipe, in a message, in a look. It was waiting inside the parts of you you've spent a lifetime trying to hide. The shame, the anger, the hunger, the need, the doubt, the desire. That's where love begins, in the cave, not the dream. Carl Jung once said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But the hidden cost of that privilege is that you will lose who you thought you needed to be in order to be loved. That persona, the charming one, the strong one, the independent one, the funny one, was never loved. It was admired. It was tolerated. It was used. But love, real love, it doesn't want the mask. It wants the marrow. It doesn't want your perfection. It wants your presence. It doesn't ask you to perform. It dares you to be seen, fully, even if it costs you everything. And that is why most people never experience it, because they never dare to lose the game they've spent their whole life trying to win. But you're starting to see. The game was never yours. You were born into a world that taught you to crave fairy tales and fear solitude, a world that turned love into a marketplace, that told you to chase validation, not truth. That said, find someone who fits you, instead of find someone who stretches you, who holds your mirror steady, who doesn't rescue you from your darkness but walks beside you into it. Because here is the final truth, the one most will never tell you. Love is not here to make you happy. Love is here to make you whole. And wholeness is not always pleasant. It breaks, it confronts, it humbles, it exposes the parts of you that still don't believe you're worthy. But it also redeems. Because when you allow yourself to be loved, not for what you offer, or how you perform, or what you give, but for who you are when everything falls apart, you begin to understand what divinity feels like in human form. You begin to understand that love is not an emotion, it is a frequency, a state of being, a presence you bring into every room, not something you extract from someone else. And in that state, something quiet and sacred happens. You stop chasing, you start radiating. You stop asking others to carry your soul. You carry it yourself, with reverence. You stop needing love to make you feel safe. You start becoming the safety that love can grow inside. And from this place, not fantasy, not craving, but presence, you attract love that is no longer performative. You attract love that remembers itself through you. And perhaps, one day, you will meet someone on this same path. Someone who is not afraid of the quiet, who does not see you as a project, who does not fall in love with your potential, but with your truth, even when it's trembling, even when it's inconvenient. Someone who doesn't rescue you, someone who sees you. But until then, or even if never, the work is this. Become the person you were always seeking. Become the mirror that doesn't distort. Become the container that doesn't collapse, not for someone else, but because your soul deserves to be loved by you. That's the love you've been chasing all along. Not romantic love, not fleeting desire, not a scripted performance, but the kind of love that watches you cry on the bathroom floor and says, even here, you are worthy. The kind that meets your shadow and does not flinch. The kind that says, I am not leaving, not because you please me, but because I see you and I choose you in your chaos and your clarity alike. And when you can say that to yourself, not once, not just in affirmations, but in the marrow of your being, you will have discovered the ultimate truth. You are the love you have been waiting for. And from that revelation, everything changes. You will walk differently, speak differently, choose differently. Not because you've mastered love, but because you've remembered it. And love, once remembered, doesn't need to be chased. It simply is, waiting to be lived by you.